The boy's toes curled against the frozen asphalt. 10 years old, barefoot, one shoe lost somewhere between the house and here kicked off when he stumbled over the curb 3 blocks back. His pajama pants were soaked through at the knee, and the wet wasn't water. It was dark. It was warm. It was his. Malik pressed his small body against the cracked concrete wall of the Twin Pines gas station and tried to disappear. The night air bit through his thin shirt like teeth. Above him, a neon sign buzzed and flickered, casting his shadow in stuttering intervals across the empty lot. The smell of spilled gasoline, mixed with something sharper, his own sweat, his own fear, the copper tang rising from the gash in his leg. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote screamed. Malik flinched. His ribs ached where the belt buckle had caught him. The mark on his shoulder throbbed a perfect crescent of broken skin where metal had met flesh. He could still hear it. The whistle of leather through air, the crack against bone. "Please," he whispered into the darkness. His voice was barely a sound. "Please don't leave me alone." Nobody answered. In his left hand, crumpled so tight his fingernails had torn the paper, was a page ripped from his school notebook, his mother's name, written in red crayon, shaky letters, a child's desperate prayer to someone who wasn't coming back. She'd been gone 3 years now. Vanished one morning like smoke. His stepfather said she'd left them, said she didn't want Malik anymore. Malik didn't believe that, not at first. Now, he didn't know what to believe. He'd tried to get help. God, he'd tried. 2 houses down the block, lights on, cars in the driveway, and nobody answered when he pounded on their doors. His bloody handprints still decorated their porches. The 911 call he'd made from the payphone at the corner had dissolved into static after 6 seconds. A woman's voice had said, 911, what's your, and then nothing. Dead air, dead hope. Every promise of safety had been broken. His teachers had seen the bruises. Mrs. Patterson had pulled him aside last month, her voice soft and concerned. "Malik, honey, where did you get these marks?" He'd told her. He'd told her everything. She'd said she would call someone. She'd said help was coming. The next day, she'd smiled at him like nothing happened. Social services had come once, a woman with a clipboard and tired eyes. She'd walked through the house while his stepfather smiled that smooth smile, and she'd written things down, and then she'd told Malik told a 9-year-old boy with finger-shaped bruises on his arm to come back if you ever feel unsafe again. Come back, like it was a store, like safety was something you could pick up off a shelf. His stepfather's apologies came every morning after, "I'm sorry, little man." Daddy got angry. It won't happen again. Empty words poured into empty air. The belt came back every night. Sometimes the fists, sometimes worse. But tonight was different. Tonight, his stepfather hadn't reached for the belt. Tonight, there had been a man in the kitchen. A man Malik didn't recognize. A man with slicked back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. And his stepfather had said words that made Malik's blood turn to ice in his veins. "He's yours. Just take him. We're even." Malik had run. He'd run until his lungs screamed and his leg gave out, and he'd collapsed here, at this abandoned gas station, at midnight, with nothing but a crumpled paper and a prayer that anyone would find him before they did. The coyote cried again, closer now. And then, Malik heard something else. The rumble started low, a vibration in the concrete before it became a sound, like thunder rolling in from the horizon, except the sky was clear and full of stars. Malik's head snapped up. Headlights, dozens of them, sweeping across the empty lot, like searchlights hunting prey. The rumble grew into a roar engines. So many engines, and the darkness ahead, filled with chrome and leather, and the growl of machines built for the open road. Motorcycles. Malik's heart seized. His battered eyes went wide. The bikes pulled into the station, one after another, a river of steel and noise flooding the lot. Men climbed off, big men with beards and tattoos and jackets covered in patches, men who looked like the kind of people his stepfather had always warned him about. "Stay away from those bikers, boy. They'll eat you alive." Malik pressed harder against the wall. His legs screamed in protest, but he couldn't run, couldn't even stand. All he could do was watch as the motorcycles surrounded him, like wolves circling a wounded deer. Help or horror? He didn't know. He couldn't tell any more which was which. Every adult had worn a mask. Every smile had hidden teeth. Why would these men be any different? But something in him, something small and stubborn and desperate, wouldn't let him look away. Something that remembered his mother's voice, before she disappeared, telling him that angels came in strange disguises. The engines cut off one by one. Silence rushed back in. And in that silence, Malik heard footsteps approaching. Marcus Mac Callahan had been riding for 32 years. He'd seen a lot of things on the road. Beautiful things. Terrible things. Sunrises over mountain passes, and bodies in ditches, and everything in between. After 3 decades, he figured nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. Mac had pulled into Twin Pines for one reason: coffee. His crew had been riding since noon, and his bones ached in that familiar way that meant he was getting old, whether he liked it or not. Just one more cup of that gas station sludge, and then they'd hit the motel 2 exits up. He was checking the oil on his Harley when Doc Turner straightened up beside him and froze. "Damn," Doc muttered. "Did you hear that?" Mac paused, listened. At first, nothing, just the tick of cooling engines and the buzz of the dying neon sign. Then, faint as a whisper, a sound that made his blood run cold. A moan, small, broken, coming from the dark corner of the lot. Mac exchanged a look with Raven Hayes. She was already moving, her coffee abandoned on the pump, lean and fierce. Raven had been a mother before she was a biker, and that instinct never died. She could hear a child's cry through a hurricane. They found him curled against the wall by the far pumps. A little boy, couldn't have been more than 10. His face was pale as chalk, eyes squeezed shut, whimpering sounds escaping from between clenched teeth. He was clutching his leg, like it might fall off if he let go. Blood everywhere, shirt torn at the shoulder, bruises visible even in the dim light. "Jesus Christ," someone breathed behind Mac. That was Snake young Tony Richards, newest member of their chapter. His cigarette fell from his fingers and hit the asphalt, sending up a tiny shower of sparks. His face had gone the color of old paper. Mac moved forward slowly, the way you'd approach a wounded animal, the way you'd approach something terrified and broken that might bolt if you made one wrong move. He knelt down, extended his hand, palm up, non-threatening, open. "Holy hell, kid," Mac said softly. "Are you hurt?" The boy's eyes flew open. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Brown eyes meeting brown, man and child, stranger and stranger. Malik's gaze darted to Mac's vest, to the patches stitched across the leather, the insignia he'd seen once in a news article about motorcycle clubs. Hell's Angels. Malik's breath caught, his hand small, trembling, streaked with dried blood, reached out and grabbed Mac's jacket sleeve. "It's okay, sir." His voice cracked on every word. "I'm hurt real bad. Please." A sob broke through. "Don't leave me." Mac felt something in his chest crack open, something he'd kept locked away for years. "We're not going anywhere, son." Raven was already pulling the clean shirt from her saddlebag before Mac finished speaking. She knelt beside the boy and began wrapping it around his knee, her movements quick and practiced. Mother's hands, hands that had bandaged, scraped elbows, and kissed bruised foreheads, and held children through nightmares. "You're okay, baby," she murmured. "You're safe now. We've got you." Doc Turner shouldered in next, his broad frame blocking the wind. Former Navy corpsman, spent 6 years patching up Marines in places he wasn't allowed to talk about. He'd seen wounds that would make grown men weep. This was worse, because this was a child, and child wounds hit different. "Compound fracture," Doc said quietly, his gentle hands probing Malik's leg. "Deep gash here, he's lost blood. Significant." He looked up at Mac, his weathered features grim. "We need an ambulance. Now." Mac already had his phone out. "Hey, it's Mac. We've got a kid who needs an ambulance at Twin Pines gas station. Yeah, 10 years old. Hurt bad. Get here fast." Raven had taken Malik's hand, the one clutching that crumpled paper, and was slowly, carefully, trying to ease his grip. not taking it from him, just looking. The paper unfolded, a scribbled address, 5th Street, a childish drawing of a house with a broken roof, a name written in faded crayon. "What's this, sweetheart?" Raven asked softly. Malik's eyes filled with tears. "That's where," he swallowed hard. "That's where he was gonna take me." Silence, heavy as a stone. "Who, baby? Who was gonna take you?" Malik's voice dropped to a whisper, like saying it too loud would make it more real. "He was gonna sell us." The bikers went still. Every single one of them. Snake's jaw tightened until the muscles jumped. Doc's hands paused mid-bandage. Raven's eyes went flat and hard in a way that would make smart men very, very nervous. Mac felt the familiar heat rising in his chest, the rage he'd learned to control over 30 years on the road, the fury that made men do stupid things. This wasn't a runaway. This wasn't a kid who'd had a bad night. This was something much, much darker. Freddie arrived at a jog, Raven's husband, carrying bottles of water and a first aid kit from his saddlebag. He took one look at Malik, and his face went pale. "What the hell?" "Not now," Max said quietly. He leaned closer to Malik, close enough that the boy could see his eyes, close enough that Malik could see there was no lie there, no mask, no smile hiding teeth. "Listen to me, son. You hear me? Stay with me. You're not alone anymore." Mac's voice was low, steady, a promise carved in stone. "You're safe. We're here. And nobody's taking you anywhere." Malik's hand found Mac's and held on like a lifeline. In the distance, sirens began to wail. If you believe that sometimes the scariest-looking people have the biggest hearts, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Biker's Bite and join the thousands who know that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather and ride Harleys. The ambulance screamed into the gas station lot at 12:47 a.m. 2 paramedics jumped out before the vehicle fully stopped, their boots hitting pavement as they grabbed the stretcher. They'd been told to expect a child. They hadn't been told to expect leather jackets surrounding him like a fortress wall. "Sir, we need you to step back." Mac didn't move. "I'm staying with him." The lead paramedic, a tired woman, in her 40s with gray streaking her ponytail, looked at Mac's vest, looked at Malik's hand, gripping Mac's jacket, looked at the wall of bikers behind them. She made a calculation. "Fine. One of you can ride along. The rest follow in your vehicles." Mac climbed into the ambulance without hesitation. Behind him, engines roared to life. 23 motorcycles pulled out of Twin Pines in formation, following the flashing lights through empty streets like a leather-clad funeral procession. Malik drifted in and out on the stretcher. The paramedics worked fast IV line, oxygen mask, pressure on the wound. His small chest rose and fell in shallow bursts. Every few seconds, his eyes would flutter open, searching, panicked, until they found Mac's face. "Still here, son," Mac said each time. "Not going anywhere." The ambulance hit a pothole, Malik whimpered. "Almost there, buddy," the paramedic said. "You're doing great." But Malik wasn't listening to her. His cracked lips were moving, forming words too quiet to hear over the sirens. Mac leaned closer. "Hurt Mama?" Mac's jaw tightened. "What's that?" "Son, they hurt Mama." Malik's voice was a thread. "Sold her pills. Said she owed them. Then said they'd sell me next." The paramedic exchanged a look with her partner. Mac's hands curled into fists on his knees. "Who, Malik? Who said that?" But the boy's eyes had closed again. His grip on Mac's jacket loosened as unconsciousness took him under. County General Hospital, at 1 a.m., was a fluorescent nightmare. The waiting room smelled like industrial cleaner and old coffee. Plastic chairs lined the walls in cheerful colors that fooled nobody. A television mounted in the corner played infomercials to an audience of empty seats. The bikers filled the space like an invasion. 23 leather jackets spread across the waiting room, perched on chairs too small for their frames, leaning against walls, pacing by windows. Nurses glanced over nervously. A security guard hovered by the door, his hand near his radio, clearly trying to decide if this situation required backup. Raven sat closest to the emergency room doors. Her leg bounced, Her fingers drummed against her knee. Every time those doors swung open, her head snapped up. "He's been in there 40 minutes, she said. "They're working on him." Doc's voice was calm, but his hands told a different story, clasped together so tight, his knuckles had gone white. "That leg was bad. They're probably setting the bone now." "He's 10 years old, Doc." "I know. He said someone was going to sell him." "I know." Raven stood up, sat down, stood up again. "I can't just sit here." Before Doc could respond, the emergency room doors swung open. A nurse in blue scrubs stepped out, her eyes scanning the crowd of leather until they landed on Mac. "Are you with the boy? Malik?" Mac was on his feet in an instant. "How is he?" "Stable. We've set the fracture and stitched the laceration. He's lost blood, but not enough to need a transfusion." The nurse paused. "The injuries on his body, they're not from tonight. Some of those bruises are weeks old." "We know." The nurse's expression shifted. Professional distance cracking into something human. "He keeps asking for you. The man with the leather jacket. He won't let anyone touch him unless you're in the room." Mac didn't hesitate. "Take me to him." Raven stepped forward. "I'm coming too." The nurse looked like she might argue, then shrugged. "Fine, but keep it quiet. He needs rest." Malik looked smaller in the hospital bed. The harsh lights washed out his brown skin, made the bruises stand out like watercolor stains. An IV line ran into his arm. Monitors beeped in steady rhythm. His leg was wrapped in white bandages and elevated on pillows, but his eyes were open. They tracked Mac and Raven as they entered, watchful, waiting. When Mac pulled up a chair beside the bed, Malik's hand reached out and grabbed his sleeve again. "You came back? Told you I would." Something in Malik's face cracked. A tear slipped down his cheek, cutting a clean line through the grime. "Nobody ever comes back." Raven moved to the other side of the bed. Her hand found Malik's gentle, careful of the IV, and she held it the way she used to hold her own children's hands when they were small and scared. "We're here, baby," she said, "and we're not leaving." For a long moment, Malik just looked at them, like he was trying to decide if this was real or just another dream that would dissolve into mourning and hollow apologies. Then he started to talk. "My mama, she wasn't bad." His voice cracked and rebuilt itself with every word. "She was sick, I think. Needed stuff to feel better. The pills, she got them from him." "From who, sweetheart?" Malik's eyes dropped to the sheets. "His name's Rick Johnson, my stepdaddy's friend." Mac's spine went rigid. "At first he was nice. Brought me candy. Told Mama he'd help her. But then," Malik's throat worked. "She owed him money. A lot of money. And when she couldn't pay." "What happened, Malik?" "She disappeared." The words came out flat, hollow. The way children speak when they've repeated something so many times it's lost all meaning. "Stepdaddy said she ran away. Said she didn't want me no more. But I don't think she ran." Raven's grip on his hand tightened. "And tonight?" Mac asked quietly. "Tonight, Mr. Rick came to the house. Stepdaddy said. Said I was his now. Said they was even." Malik's voice dropped to a whisper. I ran as fast as I could. But I heard him behind me, yelling. And my leg. I fell, and it—" "Shh." Raven stroked his forehead. "You don't have to." "I ran," Malik repeated, stronger now. "And that made them hurt me worse. Stepdaddy caught me at the fence. Used his belt. Said if I ever ran again, they'd kill me like they killed." He stopped. His eyes went wide. "Like they killed who, Malik?" But the boy shook his head violently, fresh tears spilling. I can't say it. He'll find out. He always finds out." Mac leaned forward. His voice was low and steady as bedrock. "Listen to me, son. Whatever you tell us stays with us. And I promise you, I give you my word, that man is never going to touch you again. You understand? He'll have to go through every single one of us first." Malik's eyes searched Mac's face, looking for the lie, looking for the crack in the mask that every adult eventually revealed. He didn't find one. "Mama," he whispered. "I think they killed my mama." The room went silent, except for the beeping monitors. Raven pulled Malik close, careful of his injuries, and held him while he shook. An hour later, Max stood in the hospital hallway, with his phone pressed to his ear. "Tell me about Rick Johnson." On the other end of the line, Hector's voice was gravel and cigarettes. Longtime club member. 20 years with the sheriff's department before a bullet to the knee ended his career. Now, he ran background checks and dug up dirt for people who needed answers the legal system couldn't provide. Rick Johnson, age 52, owns Johnson, exterminating, been in business 18 years, contracts with the county for pest control, mostly government buildings and schools, member of the First Baptist Church since he moved here, teaches Sunday school, serves on the neighborhood association, coaches Little League. Mac's jaw tightened. Sounds like a real pillar of the community. That's the mask. Want to know what's underneath? Hit me. 3 complaints filed against him in the last decade. All dropped. One was a woman who claimed he'd threatened her when she couldn't pay for services. Another was a former employee who said Johnson was running something illegal out of his warehouse. Third was a neighbor who reported suspicious activity, people coming and going at all hours, mostly women and kids. And nothing stuck? Not a damn thing. Johnson's got friends in the department. His brother-in-law is a county judge. Every complaint got buried before it could grow legs. Hector paused. But here's the interesting part. I cross-referenced his name with some of the old files I kept. 3 years ago, a woman named Denise Watkins disappeared. Left behind a son. Last person to see her alive? A neighbor who said she was getting into a car outside Rick Johnson's office. Mac's hand tightened on the phone. Denise Watkins. That's the boy's mother, isn't it? Yeah. Then this ain't just child abuse, brother. This is something much bigger. Mac was quiet for a long moment. Down the hall, he could see Raven through the window of Malik's room, still holding the boy's hand while he slept. Get the crew together, he said finally. Everyone who's in town. Call in markers from the other chapters if you have to. We're going to need numbers. What's the play? First, we keep the kids safe. Then we find out exactly what Rick Johnson has been doing behind that Sunday school smile. Mac's voice went flat and cold. And then we make sure he never does it again. Dawn broke gray and cold over County General. Malik had slept in Fitz nightmares, jerking him awake every hour, each time his eyes wild, until they found Mac or Raven still beside him. By morning, he looked slightly less pale, slightly less broken. The doctors said the bone would heal in 6 weeks with proper care. The other wounds would take longer. Raven had found Malik's backpack in the ambulance, a battered thing held together with duct tape and hope. While Malik slept, she'd carefully emptied its contents onto the small table by the window. A faded photograph, edges worn soft from handling, a woman with Malik's eyes and a smile that didn't quite reach them, Denise Watkins. Gone 3 years and never reported missing by anyone who mattered. Family court papers, folded and refolded until the creases were nearly torn. Custody of minor child, granted to father, it read. The date was 2 months after his mother disappeared. A ripped page from a phone book. One listing circled in red crayon. Johnson Exterminating Co. The words were crossed out with violent strokes, again and again, until the paper had nearly torn through. And at the very bottom of the bag, wrapped in a dirty sock, was a man's wallet. Raven opened it carefully. No cash inside, no credit cards, just a driver's license with a familiar face. Rick Johnson. Mac. He was beside her in an instant. She held up the wallet. Malik must have grabbed this when he ran, she said. Maybe evidence. Maybe just a piece of the monster he was trying to escape. Mac took the wallet, stared at the face on the license. Clean cut, trustworthy. The kind of face that made people feel safe. We have to believe him, he said quietly. No matter what anyone else says, we have to believe that boy. I believe him, Raven said. I believed him the second I saw his eyes. Mac nodded. He looked through the window at Malik, small and bruised in that hospital bed, and made a decision that would change everything. The hospital cafeteria became a war room. By 8 a.m., 12 bikers had gathered around a table meant for 4. They'd pushed chairs together, spread papers across the surface, and spoken in low voices while nurses and orderlies gave them a wide berth. Hector had arrived with a folder thick enough to be a phone book. His silver hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and his bad knee made him lean on a cane, but his eyes were sharp as ever. "Here's what we're dealing with," he said, spreading documents across the table. "Rick Johnson isn't just a contractor who moonlights as a child predator. He's running something organized. We're talking years of operation, multiple victims." "How many?" Snake asked. "Can't say for sure, but I've found connections to at least 4 missing persons cases over the last decade. All women, all struggling with addiction, all had children." Raven made a sound in her throat, something between a growl and a sob. "The pattern is always the same," Hector continued. "Johnson targets women who owe money, usually for drugs or services he provides. He offers to help, gets close to the family. Then, the women disappear. And somehow, Johnson ends up connected to what happens to the kids." "Connected how?" Doc asked. "Sometimes he's listed as a reference on foster care applications. Sometimes the kids end up in homes where people owe him favors. And sometimes," Hector's jaw tightened, "sometimes the kids just disappear too." The table went quiet, the weight of it pressed down on everyone. "Malik's stepfather," Max said. "Where does he fit?" "Warren Hayes." Malik's mother started seeing him about a year before she vanished. "Guy's got a rap sheet, petty theft, possession, assault. He's been in and out of the system his whole life. My guess? He's an errand boy. Does what Johnson tells him in exchange for whatever Johnson provides." "And the custody papers?" "Signed by a judge 2 months after Denise disappeared. Same judge who's married to Johnson's sister." Hector shook his head. "The whole thing was orchestrated. Johnson's been planning this for years." Max stood up, walked to the window. The morning sun cut through the glass and threw his shadow long across the floor. "So what you're telling me," he said slowly, "is that this man has been preying on women and children for over a decade, right under everyone's noses, and nobody did a damn thing about it because he teaches Sunday school and coaches Little League? That's exactly what I'm telling you. And if we go to the cops with what we know, what happens?" Hector's expression was grim. "Best case? They open an investigation. Johnson's friends in the department find out. Evidence disappears. Malik gets labeled a troubled child with a history of making things up. Worst case? They charge us with kidnapping for keeping the boy away from his legal guardian. His legal guardian sold him to a predator. I know that. You know that. But legally, Warren Hayes has custody papers signed by a county judge. Rick Johnson has 18 years of spotless reputation. And we're a bunch of bikers with rap sheets and scary tattoos." Hector spread his hands. "Who do you think they're going to believe?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Snake broke the silence. "So what do we do?" Mac turned from the window. His eyes were hard. "We do what we always do. We protect the kid. We gather evidence. And we make sure that when this comes out, and it will come out, there's no judge, no sheriff, no politician who can make it disappear." He looked around the table. "Rick Johnson thinks he's untouchable. He's about to find out he's wrong." The hospital room had become a fortress. 2 bikers stood outside the door at all times. Another 2 monitored the parking lot. Raven had moved a cot into the room itself and refused to leave Malik's side. Every entrance to the pediatric ward had been noted, every exit mapped. Malik watched all of this with wide eyes. "Why are you doing this?" he asked on the second morning. His voice was stronger now, though his hands still shook when he reached for things. "You don't even know me." Max sat in the chair beside his bed, same as he had all night. "Don't need to know you, son." "But why?" Mac was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "When I was about your age," he said, "something bad happened to someone I loved. Someone who should have protected them didn't. And everyone else just looked the other way, pretended it wasn't happening, because that was easier than getting involved." Malik listened. "I swore that if I ever had the chance to be the person who didn't look away, who actually did something, I'd take it. Every time, no matter what." Mac's eyes met Malik's. "You needed help. We showed up. That's just how it works. But what if they come back? What if Mr. Rick—" "Let me tell you something about Mr. Rick." Mac's voice went low and steady. He's spent his whole life hurting people who couldn't fight back, women struggling to survive, kids who had nobody to protect them. He picked his victims carefully, made sure they were alone, that no one would come for them. Mac leaned closer. He made a mistake with you. What mistake? He didn't know about us. The call came at noon on the second day. Mac's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stepped into the hallway to answer. Mr. Callahan, the voice was smooth, practiced, like a salesman or a preacher or a man who'd spent years learning how to sound trustworthy. My name is Rick Johnson. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Mac's grip on the phone tightened. Don't know what you're talking about. Don't play games. The boy, Malik, he's my responsibility now. His father signed the papers. Everything's legal and proper. That boy is in the hospital with a broken leg and bruises all over his body. Nothing legal about that. A pause. When Johnson spoke again, his voice had dropped a few degrees. Boys get hurt. They fall. They fight. It's a tragedy, but it happens. I'm sure you understand. I understand plenty. Good. Then you understand that the boy needs to come home. Tonight? His father is very worried about him. His father can go to hell. Another pause. Longer this time. Mr. Callahan, I'm trying to be reasonable here. I'm offering you the chance to walk away from a situation you don't understand. Take it. Go back to your little club and your little rides and forget you ever saw that child. And if I don't, then things get complicated. Johnson's voice was ice now. I have friends in this town, powerful friends, friends who can make life very difficult for a group of outlaw bikers who've taken custody of a child that doesn't belong to them. Kidnapping charges, criminal conspiracy. I can have every one of you in a cell by morning. Max smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Let me explain something to you, Mr. Johnson. I've been riding with this club for 32 years. I've seen men try to threaten us, bribe us, break us. You know what happened to all of them? They're gone. We're still here. You don't... I'm not finished. That boy you tried to sell? He's got family now. He's got 90 men and women who will ride through fire to keep him safe. So go ahead. Call your friends. File your charges. Make your threats. We'll be waiting. Mac's voice dropped to a growl. And while you're at it, start looking over your shoulder. Because we're coming for you. He hung up. That night, Malik told them everything. He sat propped up in his hospital bed, a cup of warm soup in his hands that he was too nervous to drink. Raven sat beside him. Max stood by the window. Doc, Hector, and Snake had gathered in the room's small sitting area. It started when I was 7, Malik said. His voice was flat. The way trauma sometimes sounds distant from itself, like reading someone else's story aloud. Mama was sick a lot. She'd shake and cry and couldn't get out of bed. Then Mr. Rick started coming around. He gave her pills that made her feel better. What kind of pills? Hector asked, gently. I don't know. Little white ones. She needed them every day, or she'd get real sick. Malik stared into his soup. After a while, she owed him money. Lots of money. He said she had to work it off. Work it off how? Malik's throat moved. He didn't answer. You don't have to say anything you're not ready to say, Raven told him. I want to, his voice cracked. I want someone to know. Nobody ever let me tell them before. He took a breath. Sometimes men would come to our house. Mama would send me to my room and tell me to stay there no matter what. I'd hear things through the walls. Bad things. But then one day, he stopped. His hands had started shaking so hard, the soup sloshed in the cup. Raven took it from him gently. One day she was gone, Malik whispered. She was there when I went to sleep, and gone when I woke up. The man who calls himself my stepdaddy, he was there instead. Said Mama left. Said she didn't want me. Said I belonged to him now. And the court papers, Max said. How did that happen? Mr. Rick brought a lady to the house. She asked me questions, but Warren, my stepdaddy, was right there the whole time, and he kept looking at me, and I was so scared, I just said what he told me to say. Malik's eyes filled with tears. I said Mama left. I said Warren took good care of me. I said everything was fine. Oh, sweetheart. Raven pulled him close. Then, last week, Malik continued, his voice muffled against her shoulder, Mr. Rick came to the house. He and Warren were talking in the kitchen. They didn't know I was listening. Warren said he was behind on payments, said he didn't have anything left to give, and Mr. Rick said there was one thing he had. The room went dead silent. Me. Malik pulled back from Raven's embrace. His eyes, those brown eyes that had seen too much, locked onto Max. He said Warren could give him me, as payment. Same as Mama. Max's hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something hotter and more dangerous. That's when you ran? Not right away. I waited. That night, Mr. Rick came back with his truck. He was going to take me somewhere. I heard Warren say, "Just don't bring him back. We're even after this." And Malik's voice broke. I ran. I ran so hard. I thought if I could just get away, if I could find someone to help me. You did, baby. Raven held him tighter. You found us. But they're going to come back, aren't they? Malik's voice was small, terrified. A child again, beneath all that forced maturity. Mr. Rick always gets what he wants. Warren said so. He said there's no point running because Mr. Rick knows everyone. Cops and judges and everyone. Mac crossed the room. Knelt beside the bed, so he was eye level with Malik. Look at me, son. Malik looked. You see these people in this room? You see the ones outside that door? Mac's voice was granite. We're your family now, 90 of us. 90 people who chose to stand between you and anyone who wants to hurt you. That's not a promise I'm making for the future. That's already true. Right now, tonight, you've got family. Malik's lip trembled. Rick Johnson thinks he's powerful, thinks he knows everyone, but he doesn't know us. And by the time we're done, he's going to wish he'd never heard the name Malik Watkins. For the first time since they'd found him in that gas station lot, Malik smiled. Small, fragile, but real. Thank you, he whispered. Mac squeezed his shoulder. Thank us when it's over. Before we see what happens next, hit that like button if you're rooting for Malik. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We've got family all over the world. Your engagement helps us bring more stories like this to people who need to hear them. The motel room smelled like cigarette smoke and desperation. Somebody had tried to cover both with pine air freshener. It hadn't worked. The wallpaper was peeling at the corners. The carpet was a shade of brown that might have once been gold, and the mattress sagged in the middle like a tired sigh. It was perfect. Mac had rented 3 rooms at the Pineview Motor Lodge, far enough from Johnson's territory to be safe, close enough to the courthouse to matter. Room 112 became the command center. Room 114 became Malik's sanctuary. Room 116 became the staging ground. By noon on the 3rd day, the operation was in full swing. That's 43, confirmed, Hector said, phone pressed to his ear. Tommy's bringing 12 from the Riverside chapter. Big Mike's got another 15 coming up from the valley. Mac stood at the window, watching the parking lot fill with chrome and leather. Every few minutes, another group pulled in. Men he'd known for decades, men he'd never met, all of them answering the same call. A child needed help. That was enough. What about law enforcement? Doc asked. Hector covered the phone's mouthpiece. I've got a Sergeant Rodriguez. Works out of the county station. Good man. Lost his daughter to an overdose 3 years back. He's been trying to take down Johnson's operation for years, but every time he gets close, the case falls apart. Let me guess. Evidence disappears? Like magic. Hector's jaw tightened. Rodriguez has been waiting for something he could use, something Johnson couldn't make vanish. I think we can give him that. Mac nodded slowly. What does he need? Medical documentation, Malik's testimony, the wallet, and most importantly, witnesses who can't be intimidated into silence. He's got 90 of those. That's what I told him. Raven's contact at Child Protective Services was less encouraging. I want to help, the woman said through the phone. Her voice was tired. The kind of tired that came from years of fighting a system that didn't want to change. But without documented evidence of abuse, without a formal complaint filed with law enforcement, my hands are tied. The boy has a broken leg, Raven said flatly. Bruises covering his body, belt marks on his shoulder. What more documentation do you need? I need it in the system. Official reports. Medical records submitted through proper channels. Right now, All I have is your word against Johnson's custody papers. Johnson's custody papers are fraudulent. Then prove it. In court, with evidence. The woman sighed. I'm not the enemy here. I've seen what Johnson does. I've suspected for years. But suspicion isn't enough. The system protects men like him because the system was built by men like him. Raven's grip on the phone tightened. Then we'll burn the system down. That's not. Raven hung up. Doc was waiting in the doorway. No help from CPS? Help yourself. That's the message. Raven ran a hand through her hair. They know what's happening. They've always known. They just don't care enough to risk their jobs over it. Then we make sure they don't have a choice. Doc held up a folder. I've got everything from the hospital. X-rays, photographs, the attending physician's notes. I also had a forensic specialist take a look off the record. Those injuries are consistent with long-term, systematic abuse. No judge in the country could look at this and call it an accident. You think that'll be enough? I think it'll be enough to get Malik into protective custody. The rest, Doc's expression hardened, the rest we handle ourselves. In room 114, Malik sat on the bed with his bad leg propped on pillows. Someone had brought him a teddy bear. Old, worn, missing one button eye. He held it against his chest, the way drowning men hold lifelines. How you doing, kid? Mac stood in the doorway. Behind him, the noise of the operation continued. Phones ringing, voices conferring, engines rumbling in the parking lot. But in this room, everything was quiet. I'm scared, Malik admitted. Good. Scared means you understand what's happening. Mac crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. Scared keeps you sharp. Are you scared? Mac considered the question. Not of Johnson, not of his friends, not of anything they can throw at us. Then what are you scared of? Failing you. Malik looked up. Those brown eyes, haunted, exhausted, but still somehow hopeful, searched Mac's face. You won't, he said quietly. I know you won't. How do you know that? Because you're still here, Malik's voice cracked. Everyone else left. My mama, the teachers, the social worker. They all said they'd help, and then they disappeared. But you're still here. That means something. Mac was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a patch-worn leather, stitched with the club's insignia. This belonged to my son, he said. He rode with us for 3 years before a drunk driver took him. 19 years old, his whole life ahead of him. Malik's eyes went wide. After he died, I thought about hanging up my jacket, walking away from all of this. What was the point, right? I couldn't protect my own kid. What good was I to anyone? Mac turned the patch over in his hands. But then I realized something. The best way to honor him wasn't to give up. It was to make sure other kids had someone in their corner, someone who wouldn't walk away. He pressed the patch into Malik's hand. You're not alone, son. Not anymore. Whatever happens tonight, whatever happens after you've got family, and family doesn't leave. Malik clutched the patch against his chest, right next to the teddy bear. Thank you, he whispered. Max squeezed his shoulder. Thank me when it's over. By sunset, 90 motorcycles filled the motel parking lot. They'd come from everywhere. The Riverside chapter, the Valley crew, independents who'd heard the call and answered anyway. Men with gray beards and young men with fresh tattoos, women with steel in their eyes and fire in their hearts. All of them wearing leather, all of them ready. Max stood on the second-floor walkway and looked down at the gathering army. Quite a sight, isn't it? Hector had appeared beside him, leaning on his cane. The old detective's eyes swept across the parking lot, counting heads, calculating odds. We've got enough to make a statement, Max said. The question is whether that statement will matter. Rodriguez is in position. He's got a warrant for Johnson's arrest based on Doc's medical documentation and Malik's preliminary statement. As soon as we give the word, he moves. And Johnson's friends in the department, being dealt with, Rodriguez has been building a case against the corruption for years. Tonight, he's going to blow it wide open. Hector smiled grimly. Johnson's about to find out that not everyone can be bought. Mac nodded. He turned to face the crowd below. Listen up. The conversation stopped. 90 faces turned upward. Most of you don't know each other. Some of you have never met me, but you all know why you're here. A 10-year-old boy was beaten, sold, and left to die in a gas station parking lot. The man who did it thinks he's untouchable. He thinks his money and his connections will protect him. He thinks nobody cares enough to stop him. Mac's voice dropped to a growl. He's wrong. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Fists clenched, jaws tightened. Tonight, we're going to show Rick Johnson what happens when he picks on someone who has family. Real family. The kind that doesn't give up, doesn't back down, and doesn't look the other way. Mac's eyes swept across the assembled bikers. Half of you stay here, guard that boy with your lives. The other half, you're with me. He turned toward his Harley. Let's ride. Malik watched them go from the window. 45 motorcycles pulling out of the parking lot in formation. The thunder of their engines shook the glass. The setting sun painted their silhouettes in shades of orange and purple, turning them into something mythical. Knights on steel horses, riding to war. Raven stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder. Scared? She asked. Yeah. Good. Me too. She squeezed gently. But scared doesn't mean helpless. Scared means we know what's at stake. Malik pressed his palm against the window. The last of the bikes disappeared around the corner, and the rumble faded into silence. What if it doesn't work? He asked quietly. What if Mr. Rick gets away? What if he comes back for me? Then he'll have to go through 45 people to get to this door. Raven's voice was steel. And when he gets to the door, he'll have to go through me. Malik looked up at her. This woman he'd known for 3 days. This stranger who'd held his hand through nightmares and wiped blood from his face and promised him things nobody had ever promised before. Why do you care? He asked. You don't even know me. Raven was quiet for a moment. Then she knelt down so she was eye level with him. When I was 12 years old, she said, someone hurt me, badly, for a long time, and nobody helped. Nobody came. I learned to survive on my own because I didn't have a choice. Malik's breath caught. I swore that if I ever saw a kid going through what I went through, I wouldn't look away. I wouldn't make excuses. I wouldn't tell myself it was someone else's problem. Her eyes glistened. You're not someone else's problem, Malik. You're mine. And I don't abandon what's mine. She pulled him into a hug, careful of his injured leg, tight enough that he could feel her heartbeat. Nobody's taking you, she whispered. Not while I'm breathing. The first henchman came at 9:47 p.m. He was big, shaved head, neck tattoos, knuckles that had clearly seen frequent use. He pulled up in a black pickup truck with tinted windows and sat there for 5 minutes, engine idling, watching the motel. Raven saw him from the window. Company, she said calmly. The bikers outside shifted positions. 10 of them, spread across the parking lot, suddenly not looking casual anymore. Hands moved toward belts. Eyes locked on the truck. The man stepped out. He walked toward room 114 like he owned the place. Confident, unhurried. The kind of walk that said he was used to people getting out of his way. He made it 15 feet before Bear stepped into his path. Bear was appropriately named. 6'4", 300 pounds, hands the size of dinner plates. He didn't say anything. Didn't have to. Just stood there, arms crossed, blocking the way like a wall made of flesh and leather. The henchman stopped. I'm here for the boy, he said. Mr. Johnson sent me. Then Mr. Johnson wasted your time. Bear's voice was a low rumble. Turn around. Walk back to your truck. Drive away. And tell your boss that if he sends anyone else, they won't be walking back. The henchman's eyes flicked around the parking lot. Counting, calculating, 10 bikers visible, probably more he couldn't see. You don't know who you're dealing with, he said. Johnson's got connections. He can make problems for you people. We are the problems. A long moment passed. The henchman's jaw worked. His hands twitched at his sides. Then, slowly, he turned around. He walked back to his truck, climbed in, pulled out of the parking lot, without looking back. Inside room 114, Malik let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He's gone, Raven said. Will he come back? Doesn't matter if he does. Raven's hand found his. They can send 100 men. We'll send them all away. Rick Johnson's house sat at the end of Maple Drive, behind a wrought iron gate and a perfectly manicured lawn. The house itself was nice, but not ostentatious. 2 stories, brick facade, American flag hanging from the porch, the kind of house that said, respectable citizen, without trying too hard. The kind of house where neighbors brought casseroles when someone was sick, and nobody asked questions about the trucks that came and went at odd hours. Mac parked his Harley at the end of the driveway. 44 more engines cut off behind him. The sound of that much silence was almost louder than the noise had been. Lights flickered on inside the house. A curtain moved in an upstairs window. Mac walked to the gate and pressed the intercom button. "Can I help you?" Johnson's voice crackled through the speaker, smooth as ever, not a hint of concern. "Open the gate." "Rick, I'm afraid I don't know what this is about. If you're here to make trouble, I'm here to have a conversation. You can have it with me, or you can have it with the police officers who are about 10 minutes behind us. Your choice." A long pause. Mac could almost hear the calculations happening on the other end. The cost-benefit analysis of a predator trying to figure out his next move. The gate buzzed open. Johnson was waiting on the porch. He'd dressed for the occasion. Button-down shirt, pressed slacks, that Sunday school teacher smile plastered across his face. In one hand, he held a coffee mug, the picture of suburban normalcy. "Gentlemen," he said as Mac and Doc approached, "and ladies, to what do I owe the pleasure?" "You know exactly why we're here," Mac said. "I'm afraid I don't, but please, enlighten me." Doc stepped forward and held up a folder. "Malik Watkins, 10 years old. We found him 3 days ago, with a broken leg, lacerations, and bruises consistent with years of systematic abuse. Medical documentation, photographs, everything." Johnson's smile didn't waver. "That's terrible. Is the boy all right?" "He told us what you did. What you were going to do. Children have vivid imaginations, especially troubled ones." Johnson shook his head sadly. "Malik's had a hard life. His mother abandoned him. His father does his best, but—" He spread his hands. "Sometimes these children act out, make up stories for attention. His mother didn't abandon him," Max said quietly. "You know exactly what happened to her." For the first time, something flickered behind Johnson's eyes. A crack in the mask, just for a second. Then it was gone. "I'm sorry, but I don't know what you're talking about. Denise left town 3 years ago. Everyone knows that. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have things to do." He started to turn. "You can show yourselves out." "Rick." Mac's voice stopped him. "Look behind you." Johnson turned. His eyes swept across the driveway, the lawn, the street beyond. 45 motorcycles, 45 bikers, standing in silence, watching, waiting. The mask slipped again. This time, it stayed off longer. "What is this?" Johnson's voice had lost its smoothness. "Are you trying to intimidate me?" "I'm trying to give you a chance." Mac took a step closer. "Confess. Tell us where Denise is. Tell us what you were going to do with Malik. Come with us to the police station and make a statement. Do that. And maybe you walk away from this with your life intact." Johnson's face contorted, the pleasant Sunday school mask crumbling to reveal something ugly underneath. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," he hissed. "I own this town. The judge, the sheriff, the city council, they all owe me. One phone call, and every one of you will be in a cell by morning. Then make the call." Johnson's hand moved toward his pocket. What came out wasn't a phone. The pistol was small, chrome-plated, the kind of weapon a man keeps for emergencies. Johnson's hand shook as he raised it. "Get off my property," he snarled. "All of you, now, or I swear to God." Mac didn't move. Neither did Doc. Behind them, 43 bikers took a single step forward. In unison, the sound of boots on pavement was like thunder. Johnson's gun hand wavered. "You won't shoot," Mac said calmly. "Too many witnesses, too much evidence. Your connections can't make this disappear. You don't. But just in case." Mac moved faster than a man his age had any right to move. His hand closed around Johnson's wrist and twisted. The gun clattered to the porch. In the same motion, Mac's other fist connected with Johnson's jaw. It was a single punch. Clean. Efficient. The kind that came from decades of practice. Johnson crumpled into a deck chair, blood streaming from his lip. "That's for Malik," Mac said. The sirens arrived 11 minutes later. Rodriguez was first through the gate, badge out, warrant in hand. 3 patrol cars followed. The officers who emerged weren't Johnson's friends. They were the honest ones. The ones who'd been waiting years for this moment. "Rick Johnson," Rodriguez said, snapping handcuffs around the man's wrists. "You're under arrest for child endangerment, child trafficking, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." "This is ridiculous." Johnson's voice had gone shrill. "These people attacked me. They're the criminals. I want my lawyer." "You'll get your lawyer." Rodriguez hauled him to his feet. "But here's the thing, Rick. Your judge friend just got picked up for corruption charges. Your sheriff buddy is being questioned about evidence tampering. And 3 of your business associates are currently telling us everything they know in exchange for reduced sentences." Johnson's face went white. "Your network is gone," Rodriguez continued. "Your protection is gone. And by the time we're done going through your property, I expect we'll have enough evidence to put you away for the rest of your life." He nodded to the officers. "Take him." They led Johnson to a patrol car. His protests continued demands, threats, promises of revenge, but they grew fainter with distance. Mac watched until the car pulled away. "It's over?" Doc asked. "This part is." Mac turned to face the assembled bikers. "There's still the boy, still the court hearings, still a lot of work to do. But Johnson's done." "Yeah." Mac allowed himself a small smile. "Johnson's done." They told Malik the news at midnight. He was still awake, clutching the teddy bear and the patch Mac had given him, unable to sleep. When Mac and Raven walked through the door, his eyes went wide with fear before he saw their expressions. "It's over, baby," Raven said. "They arrested him. He's going to prison." For a long moment, Malik didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at them like he was waiting for the punchline. The cruel twist that would reveal this was all a dream. Then his face crumpled. The sobs came hard and fast. 3 years of terror pouring out in great, heaving waves. Raven held him while he shook. Mac stood guard at the door, giving them privacy. "He's really gone?" Malik asked, between gasps. "He can't come back?" "He's really gone. The police have him. He's never going to hurt you again." "And Warren, my stepdaddy?" "Arrested too. They found him trying to leave town. He's in custody." Malik cried harder. Not just from relief. From grief, too. Grief for the childhood he'd lost. Grief for the mother he'd never see again. Grief for all the years spent living in fear, waiting for a rescue that never came. Until now, when the tears finally slowed, Max sat down on the edge of the bed. "See, kid?" Justice came. Malik looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. "I didn't think it would. I really didn't. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the bad guys win and the good guys lose, and the world keeps spinning like nothing happened." Mac's voice was quiet, honest. "But sometimes, if you're lucky, if you find the right people, if you don't give up sometimes, justice shows up wearing leather and riding a Harley." For the first time since they'd found him in that gas station lot, Malik laughed. It was small, wet with tears, but real. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." Mac ruffled his hair. "Get some sleep, son. Tomorrow's going to be busy. We've got a lot of paperwork to fill out before we can officially make you one of us." "One of you?" "Family." Mac stood up. "That's what we said, isn't it? You've got family now, 90 of them. And family doesn't leave. Stories like Malik's remind us why we do this. If his story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. Because every view, every share, every comment helps us prove that the world is full of unexpected heroes. Malik slept through the night for the first time in 3 years. No nightmares, no jolting awake at phantom footsteps, no lying rigid in the darkness, waiting for the bedroom door to creak open and the shadow to appear. Just sleep deep, dreamless, the kind that children are supposed to have. When morning light crept through the motel curtains, Raven found him curled around the teddy bear, the patch Mac had given him, still clutched in his hand. His breathing was slow and even, peaceful. She didn't wake him, just pulled the blanket higher over his shoulders and stepped outside to join the others. The bikers had rotated shifts all night. 2 at the door, 2 in the parking lot, 2 more, walking the perimeter. Nobody complained. Nobody asked why. They just did it, the way family does things without question, without expectation of thanks. "How's he doing?" Doc asked. "Sleeping like a kid's supposed to sleep," Raven's voice caught slightly. "I don't think he's had that in a long time. He's safe now. That makes a difference." "Yeah." She looked back at the door. "Yeah, it does." The child psychologist arrived at 10 o'clock. Her name was Dr. Angela Morris, a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes and gray streaking her natural hair. She'd been working with traumatized children for 22 years. She'd thought she'd seen everything. Malik's case proved her wrong. "Can you tell me about your home life before that night?" she asked gently. They sat in a quiet corner of the hospital's family room, chairs positioned so Malik could see the door. His eyes kept drifting to the window, where leather jackets were visible in the parking lot. "It wasn't good," Malik said slowly. "Warren hit me. A lot. And Mr. Rick would come by sometimes and—" He stopped. His hands had started shaking. "Take your time," Dr. Morris said. "There's no rush. There was a social worker. She was supposed to check on me. Her name was Penny." Malik's voice dropped. "She came once. Just once. Then Warren told me she wasn't coming back. Said he'd taken care of it." Dr. Morris wrote something in her notebook. Her face stayed neutral, but her pen pressed harder than necessary. "Warren told you he'd taken care of it? What do you think he meant by that?" "I don't know, but after that, nobody came. Nobody checked." Malik looked up, his brown eyes old beyond their years. "It's like I stopped existing, like the whole world forgot about me." Through the window, Malik could see Mac leaning against his Harley, arms crossed, watching the building, waiting. "They didn't forget," Malik said quietly. "They found me." "Doctor." Morris followed his gaze. "Tell me about them," she said. And for the first time, Malik's voice held something other than fear. "They're my family." The transition happened gradually, then all at once. First came the emergency custody hearing. The judge, not Johnson's friend, but an honest woman, brought in from the next county, reviewed the evidence with growing horror. Medical records, photographs, Malik's testimony. The forensic investigation of Johnson's property, which had yielded far more than anyone expected. "Temporary custody is granted to protective services," she declared, with supervised visitation rights extended to Marcus Callahan and associated parties pending full background checks. It was bureaucratic language. It meant everything. Mac's house became Malik's second home within 2 weeks. His first home was a foster placement with a vetted family. But every weekend, he climbed into the back of Raven's car and made the 30-minute drive to Mac's place on the edge of town. Mac's daughter, Sophie, was 12. Old enough to understand that Malik had been through something terrible. Young enough to not ask questions. She just accepted him the way children accept things completely, without reservation. "Want to see my treehouse?" she asked on his first visit. Malik blinked. "You have a treehouse? Dad built it last summer. Come on." She grabbed his hand and pulled him across the yard before he could protest. His leg was still healing, still weak, but Sophie slowed down without being asked, without making it obvious that she was slowing down. Mac watched from the porch. Doc stood beside him, coffee in hand. "He's going to be okay," Doc said. "Yeah." Mac's voice was rough. "I think he is." The changes came in small moments. New clothes arrived from somewhere, donations from the club, Mac suspected, though nobody took credit. The torn pajamas were thrown away. The single remaining shoe was replaced by clean sneakers, white with blue stripes, the kind Malik had seen other kids wear at school, but never owned himself. He stood in Mac's bathroom, looking at himself in the mirror. New jeans, new shirt, new shoes. He almost didn't recognize the boy looking back at him. "You clean up good, kid," Doc said from the doorway. He was there for a follow-up check on Malik's leg, something he'd insisted on doing personally, even though the hospital doctors had cleared him. "I look different," Malik said. "You look healthy. There's a difference." Doc knelt down and examined the healing wound, his touch gentle and practiced. "This is coming along nicely. Another few weeks, and you'll be running around like nothing happened." "Will there be a scar?" Probably. Small one. Doc looked up. Scars aren't bad things, you know. They're proof you survived something. Proof you're stronger than whatever tried to break you. Malik considered this. Then, I'm going to have a lot of proof, he said quietly. Doc's throat tightened. Yeah, son, you are. Raven made sure Malik was never unprotected. She'd taken a leave from her substitute teaching job to coordinate the schedule. Every morning, a biker was parked in the school lot when Malik's bus arrived. Every afternoon, someone was there when it returned. Not threatening, not confrontational, just present. The other kids noticed. Is that your dad? One boy asked during lunch, pointing at the window where Snake was visible, leaning against his Harley. Malik thought about it. Kind of, he said. He's family. He looks scary. Yeah, Malik smiled. Really smiled. The kind that reached his eyes. He's supposed to. The school administrators had been hesitant at first. Calls were made, concerns were raised. But then, Raven had arrived with documentation, with character references, with a letter from Dr. Morris, explaining the therapeutic value of visible support systems. This child has experienced significant trauma, the letter read. The presence of protective figures helps establish the sense of safety necessary for healing. After that, nobody complained about the motorcycles in the parking lot. Court appearances became a regular occurrence as the case against Johnson unfolded. Each time, the bikers came. Not just Mac and Raven and Doc, all of them. 90 leather jackets filling the courthouse hallways, spilling out onto the steps, lining up along the sidewalk. They didn't speak during proceedings, didn't cause trouble, just sat there, row after row, a silent wall of protection. Malik walked between them like a prince through an honor guard. The effect on the courtroom was unmistakable. Lawyers who might have pushed harder on cross-examination thought twice when they saw the audience. Witnesses who might have recanted found their courage. Even the judge seemed to sit up straighter. You have quite a support system, she said to Malik during one hearing, a hint of warmth breaking through her professional demeanor. Yes, ma'am, Malik's voice was steady. I have family. Johnson watched from the defendant's table. His face had changed in custody, the smooth mask gone, replaced by something haggard and desperate. When his eyes met Malik's, the boy didn't look away. He didn't have to anymore. Weeks became months. The leg healed, the bruises faded, but more than that, Malik healed. It happened in pieces. A laugh at dinner that wasn't forced. A night without bad dreams. A moment of silliness in Mac's yard, chasing Sophie around the lemonade stand they'd built together. 50 cents a cup, Malik shouted at passing bikers, his voice carrying across the property. Best lemonade in the county. That's robbery, kid, Bear grumbled. But he bought 3 cups anyway. Malik counted the coins with Sophie, their heads bent together, and Mac watched from the porch with something painful and beautiful swelling in his chest. This was what childhood was supposed to look like. This was what Malik had been denied for so long, and now, piece by piece, he was claiming it for himself. He's got your stubbornness, Raven said, appearing beside Mac with her own cup of lemonade. Won't take no for an answer. He's got his own stubbornness. I just gave him permission to use it. Raven laughed. It was a good sound. There hadn't been enough laughter lately, not with the trial and the testimony and the constant vigilance. But moments like this, kids being kids, lemonade stands, and coin counting, and summer afternoons, these were the moments that made everything worth it. You've changed, you know, Raven said quietly. Have I? Since we found him, you're softer, in a good way. Mac was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I thought I was done, Raven. After my son died, I thought that part of me was closed off for good. Then this kid shows up broken, terrified, begging us not to leave him, and I realized. Realized what? That some doors only close if you let them. The conversation happened on Mac's porch, a month before the final custody hearing. Malik sat on the steps, his now healed leg stretched out in front of him. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that reminded him of that first night when 90 motorcycles had rolled into town to save a boy they'd never met. What are you thinking about? Mac asked, settling into the chair beside him. The future. Heavy stuff for a 10-year-old. I'll be 11 next month. Malik turned to look at him. When do you think I stopped being a kid, Mac? Was it when my mama disappeared? When Warren started hitting me? When Mr. Rick came to take me away? Mac's heart clenched. You never stopped being a kid, Malik. You just had to survive things no kid should survive. That's different. It doesn't feel different. It will, eventually. Mac leaned forward. What do you want to be when you grow up? You must have thought about it. Malik was quiet for a long moment. A policeman, he said finally. Like Sergeant Rodriguez. Someone who helps kids like me. Someone who doesn't look away. That's a good dream. Is it stupid? To want to be something I never thought I could be? It's the opposite of stupid. Mac's voice was firm. That's called hope. And hope is the strongest thing there is. Malik's eyes drifted to the horizon, where the last light was fading. I think about my mama sometimes, he said quietly. Not the bad stuff at the end. The good stuff from before. She used to sing to me at night. Make up stories about princes and castles and happy endings. His voice cracked. I used to think those stories were lies. But maybe they were just waiting to come true. Mac put a hand on his shoulder. Your mama would be proud of you, son. Wherever she is, she'd be so damn proud. For the first time, Malik could think about her without drowning. The grief was still there, would always be there, but it wasn't all of him anymore. She was part of his story, not the end of it. Thanks, Mac, he said quietly, for everything. Thank me by becoming that policeman. And when you do, make sure you wear the patch I gave you somewhere. They can see it. Mac's eyes crinkled. Let them know where you came from. The final custody hearing took place on a clear September morning. 90 motorcycles lined the street outside the courthouse. 90 leather jackets filled the gallery inside. The judge, the same honest woman who'd handled every hearing, looked out at the assembled crowd, and for just a moment, smiled. In the matter of custody regarding Malik Watkins, she began, this court has reviewed all evidence, all testimony, and all recommendations from Child Protective Services. Malik sat at the front table, Raven on one side, Mac on the other. His hands were steady, his eyes were clear. Rick Johnson has been convicted of multiple felonies, including child trafficking and child endangerment. He has been sentenced to 47 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Warren Hayes has been convicted of child abuse and conspiracy, sentenced to 15 years. Behind them, a murmur of satisfaction rippled through the leather-clad gallery. Given the exceptional circumstances of this case, and the demonstrated commitment of the parties seeking guardianship, this court grants full custody of Malik Watkins to the state-approved foster family, with extended family rights granted to Marcus Callahan and affiliated members of his organization. Malik's breath caught. This court also wishes to acknowledge, the judge continued, her voice softening, the extraordinary role that Mr. Callahan and his associates have played in protecting this child. It is rare that we see such dedication from non-related parties. The court commends you. She lifted her gavel. This case is closed. The gavel fell, and the courthouse erupted. 90 bikers rose to their feet, not cheering, that would have been inappropriate for a courtroom, just standing in solidarity, standing in support, standing as family. Malik turned to look at them, all those faces, many of whom he'd never met, all of whom had answered the call when a stranger child needed help. His eyes filled with tears. We did it, Raven whispered. Yeah. His voice was thick. We did. They walked out of the courthouse into September sunshine. 90 leather jackets formed an honor guard down the steps. At the bottom, 90 motorcycles waited. Mac handed Malik a helmet. What's this for? Malik asked. Victory lap. Mac swung onto his Harley. Climb on. Malik looked at the bike, looked at Mac, looked at the army of bikers waiting to ride. Then he smiled, really smiled, the kind of smile he'd almost forgotten how to make, and climbed on. The engines roared to life. 90 motorcycles pulled away from the courthouse in formation, and somewhere in the middle, arms wrapped tight around Mac's waist, Malik Watkins laughed with pure, uncomplicated joy. He was safe. He was loved. He was home. The dawn came cold and pink over the horizon. Malik stood at the window of Mac's guest room, his room now, in all the ways that mattered, and watched the sky slowly brighten. Behind him, the house was quiet. Sophie was still asleep. Mac and his wife were somewhere downstairs, the soft sounds of coffee brewing drifting up through the floorboards. But outside, on the highway that wound past the property, a different sound had woken him. Engines. Dozens of them. The rumble starting low, building to a roar, then fading into the distance like rolling thunder moving away from a storm. The riders were leaving. They'd stayed for the trial, for the custody hearing, for the weeks of transition while Malik learned what it meant to be safe. They'd come from chapters across the state, from neighboring states, from lives and jobs and families of their own, and now they were going back, but not really leaving. Not entirely. Malik pressed his palm against the cold glass and listened until the last echo of engine noise disappeared into the morning silence. Each rumble had been a promise. Each departing bike had been a brother or sister heading home, but still connected, still family. He would never face his darkness alone again. He knew that now, not because someone had told him, but because 90 strangers had proven it. There were words that stayed with Malik long after the engines faded. He remembered them at odd moments, lying in bed at night, walking to the school bus, sitting in Mac's yard, watching the sunset. Words whispered on a porch, late one evening, when Mac thought Malik was already asleep. No one is going to touch my boy when I'm around. My boy. Malik had never been anyone's boy. Not really. His mother had loved him, but she'd been sick, struggling, drowning in her own demons. His stepfather had seen him as property, burden, and eventually currency. The system had seen him as a case number, a file to be processed and forgotten, but Mac saw him as a boy, his boy. It changed everything. The words became Malik's armor. When the nightmares came, and they still came, sometimes, less often, but still, he would whisper them to himself in the dark. When the memories surfaced without warning the belt, the fear, the cold concrete of that gas station, he would close his eyes and hear Mac's voice. My boy. He carried those words into every new day. Into the classroom, where he was finally catching up on 3 years of missed education. Into the therapist's office, where he was learning that his feelings were valid and his trauma wasn't his fault. Into the courthouse, where he'd testified against the men who'd hurt him without flinching. Victim, protected child, future protector. The transformation was happening, one day at a time. The story spread. At first, it was just the neighborhood. People who'd seen the motorcycles lined up outside the courthouse. Neighbors who'd noticed the leather-clad sentries in the school parking lot. Whispers and rumors that grew into something larger. Did you hear about the Watkins boy? The bikers saved him. Then, the local news picked it up. A human interest piece. Motorcycle club rescues child from trafficking ring, that went viral in the way only stories of unexpected heroism can. Shares and comments and tears from strangers who saw themselves in Malik's fear and hope in the riders who'd answered. The ripples spread outward. Neighbors who'd once minded their own business started paying attention. That kid down the block who always seemed scared, was someone checking on him? The woman with the black eye, who said she'd walked into a door, had anyone offered help? The teenagers hanging around the convenience store late at night, did anyone know their names, their stories, their struggles? The angel's fierce kindness had planted a seed. Years later, when Malik was old enough to understand what had really happened, he would tell the story himself, to kids in foster care who needed to believe rescue was possible. To social workers burned out by a system that failed more than it saved. To anyone who needed to hear that sometimes, against all odds, help arrived exactly when you needed it most. 90 engines, he would say, his voice steady, his eyes clear. 90 strangers who became family in a single night. They didn't know me. They didn't owe me anything. They just showed up. The legend grew. And with each telling, somewhere out there, another person decided not to look away. The patch lived in a place of honor. Malik had tried different spots over the years. His backpack, his dresser, the windowsill where morning light could catch the worn leather, but eventually it found its permanent home, framed on the wall above his bed, visible every night before sleep and every morning upon waking. The stitching was simple, no elaborate design, no fierce imagery, just 4 words on faded leather. You're never alone. Sometimes, when the world felt heavy and the memories pressed too close, Malik would reach up and touch the frame, feel the rough edges of the wood, remember the weight of Mac's hand on his shoulder when he'd first received it. "This belonged to my son," Mac had said. "Now it belongs to you." It was more than a patch. It was a promise, a covenant, a truth that Malik intended to carry for the rest of his life and pass on to others when the time came. You're never alone. Not because loneliness doesn't exist, not because pain disappears, but because somewhere out there, in a gas station parking lot, or a late-night diner, or a stretch of empty highway, there are people who will answer if you call. Malik had learned that the hard way, and he would spend the rest of his life making sure other kids learned it too. Here's the truth about heroes. They don't always wear capes. They don't always arrive in time. They don't always look the way you'd expect. Sometimes they're tired. Sometimes they're scared. Sometimes they've got their own demons, riding shotgun, and their own wounds that never quite healed. But they show up anyway. That's what makes them heroes. Not perfection, not invincibility, just the stubborn refusal to look away when someone needs help. The bikers who found Malik that night weren't saints. They were men and women with complicated pasts, rough edges, and reputations that made respectable people cross the street. Society had written them off. The system had dismissed them. Polite company pretended they didn't exist. But when a 10-year-old boy with a broken leg and a broken spirit whispered, "Please don't leave me into the darkness," they answered. They answered with leather and chrome and the thunderous promise of 90 engines saying, "You matter. You're worth fighting for. You're not invisible anymore." So the next time you hear a rumble in the distance, the growl of motorcycles cutting through the night, don't assume the worst. Don't clutch your pearls, or lock your doors, or hurry your children inside. Listen, because that rumble might not be trouble coming your way. It might be help. It might be family you haven't met yet. It might be 90 strangers who saw a child in need and decided, together, that some things are worth riding through fire for. And if you're the one in the darkness, scared, broken, alone, with nobody coming and nowhere to go, hold on. Help is out there. Sometimes it wears a badge. Sometimes it wears a suit. And sometimes it wears leather and rides a Harley and has tattoos and a beard and the kind of face that makes people nervous. But its heart is bigger than you can imagine, and it's coming for you. You just have to hold on long enough to hear the engines. Thank you for riding with us today. If you believe that sometimes the scariest looking people have the biggest hearts, subscribe to Biker's Bite. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you'd found Malik that night? And remember, the rumble you hear might not be trouble. It might be help on the way. Because no matter what you're facing, no matter how dark it gets, no matter how many people have failed you, you're never alone.